Here we go. You know, isn't it funny how when you look at things, that things fit? Things seem to, when you really sit down and ponder some of the um, more interesting aspects of life, I suppose, or the deeper questions, isn't it funny that when you think about them, they fit and they work? And it sometimes takes me a while. You might be the same, but you have to kind of go away from things, or you have to sort of give them a moment to resonate, or you have to give them time to ferment. Maybe I don't know what the word I was looking for there was, but in the last 24 hours, as is my want, I've been reading and I've been chatting and I've been watching particular content uh, all over social media and also things that are favorites of mine, authors and video links and stuff. And every so often, whilst in the moment it sounds amazing, it sounds great, and it's something that you might like to do. It does for me take about 24 hours sometimes for those things to really solidify and really make sense. And something that I looked at yesterday, although thoroughly amazing, and I love this particular guy, has taken again 24 hours to really resonate with me, and it might with you. I don't know, but there's a guy I follow, and I have a huge amount of respect for. I love this guy. He's very funny, but he's very, very intuitive, and he's passionate about what he wants to talk about and what he believes he is giving to the world and offering. This guy's called Kyle Cease. You may be familiar with him, you may not be, but I sometimes look into these things and share them, not only for my own benefit, but so that you don't have to. In some cases, I download films and documentaries and things, and just to follow my passion, which is sharing and trying to facilitate a broader range of knowledge amongst as many people as I can. But this guy, Kyle Cease, was quite famous for doing particularly, I think, stunning events, one of which is his Evolving Out Loud tour concerts, and also something he's done, I think, more recently called the Limitation Game, and that's what I was looking at yesterday. And this is a series of hours of content, videos that are just only at the beginning. I'm only on the first one, and so one could call it plagiarizing. They're his ideas, but they are sent out in the same way that I'm doing here, as I'm sure he produced them, and that is to share this content, regardless of whose idea it was. And his idea of the limitation game was something that really sort of took me a while, just 24 hours, to really get into my mind and start opening up areas that I hadn't really looked at. And I suppose that's what we do, isn't it? We stay within this limitation that we believe we are through whatever cultural upbringing, social upbringing that we've had. We believe we are a set of circumstances or experiences, and we just stay within that limitation. And I suppose when something new is offered, like change, for example, or if you decide there's something within this environment that you don't like and you want to look at it, I suppose you're cracking the shell, as he calls it. You imagine that you're in this shell of experience, and this is your limitation, I suppose. And when something new comes along, like a new idea or a new way of living or a new way of being, then there is a crack in your shell. And some people are horrified by this. And some people sort of shut that down very quickly. For example, like a chick in a shell. Um, being in danger, perhaps that they're not fully formed. But this idea of the limitation game got me thinking, and it got me excited, I suppose, to look at what it is that my limitations were and looking at them in a different way. And the way that he takes you through this video series is he looks at taking a fear of yours, taking one of your darkest fears, and just attaching a simple phrase to the end of that fear. So the sentence could be, uh, "I'm I'm fearful that I'll never be the full version of myself that I could be. I'm really fearful that I'm not going to achieve my dreams." And the bit that you attach at the end is, "And I love that." Now, it sounds really simple, and of course, some of the more beautiful tools that we can use to change and evolve are the most simple. So, if I tried this last night, and I've been doing it today. I've been embracing the fear. I suppose it's an old adage, isn't it? Feel the fear and do it anyway. But I've been doing it in a way that is better for me. It feels right. So I look at what's familiar, I suppose, what my limitations are, or what I believe my limitations are. And I'm challenging him one by one. Each one of them I'm challenging with the added bonus of adding the little phrase, "and I love that." And it changes the dynamic of that particular fear, I suppose. We know that fear is an illusion anyway. Um, the work from A Course in Miracles will tell you that, you know. But some of these fears can feel very real, and so if you stay within that fear, if you stay within that limitation, and you try and patch up the cracks when opportunities to change arrive, then you're staying within the limitation game. But this is the exciting bit: is if you say, "I'm fearful that I'm going to die alone," and I love that. It changes the dynamic of that whole concept of being on your own for the rest of your life. Because then it opens up the idea that, well, what if I am on my own for the rest of my life? What other opportunities may arrive if I just remove the fear from that idea and embrace it and go with it? Because we essentially are wasting time in these fears. I suppose there was a really lovely analogy on the series, the first part of the series I looked at. There was a lady in the theatre, and he said to everyone, "Think of a fear you have." And she put her hand up and she said, I'm fearful of snakes." And he said, "Are there any snakes in the theatre?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Well, are you still fearful of snakes?" And she said, "Yes." And he says, "Surely that's a waste of your energy. That's a waste of time." So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you have a fear and you look to justify that at any point of your life in any situation, including the now, it really can be quite debilitating. And we know that fear can have that effect. But if you have a fear that comes up for you and you say, "And I love that about myself," then not only are you accepting part of your makeup at this point, you are able, I think, to transcend it and look at the possibilities. And therefore, there's an energy that is taken on in that sense, where you think, well, and I love that about myself. Okay, so where does that take me? What is, and it develops for me, within me, a certain excitement. I don't know if you feel the same about that. But I suppose when we believe we have a limitation, then we go off and we try to evidence that as well. So we say things like, "Oh, meditation, not for me." And then we then look for a reason to support that belief. So we look for evidence, and in any way we can, we look to ways to prove to ourselves that the belief or the fear that we have is real. And I think that's also a really interesting aspect of this growth journey, because ultimately, when you break the shell or when you break out a little bit, sometimes what we're a bit horrified. We Because it's the death of our old story. We feel this vulnerability like a new chick would feel. We would feel that something's broken down and we're looking for the familiar, even if it is our suffering, even if familiarity is suffering, we look for that to almost like act as a comfort blanket. When really we've got the opportunity to spread our wings. How about that for an analogy? So I'm really excited, as you might guess, and I just wanted to share that idea. So I'm going to be using that in as I look through any fears that I may have about the future and embrace them. And I love that. I'm not always great with these videos, and I love that. You see how this works? Have a great day, and look at what you might be, what game you might be in, where your limitations may be, and embrace them. And if you feel as though you can't um, break free, then just put a little crack in that. Let the light in, perhaps. All right. So I will see you next time, and I love that.